All right, today we are talking about decision and next steps. This is the sixth and final chapter of how to run a sales meeting. Again, we're not getting too in the weeds on everything, but this is a broad framework for how you can run your first time sales meeting. So if you haven't watched the other videos, I'll make sure they're on YouTube. Um, so go back through that. Otherwise, you'll skip steps, which is kind of the number one rule of a sales process is not to skip steps. So um, let's dive in though. So at this point, we're now at the end of the meeting. So this, if you get one thing from this video, I promise it's this, like with at least 5 minutes on the clock. I don't care where you're at. I don't care if you're in the middle of presenting a slide. Wherever you're at, you need to hit pause, drop everything, and transition to talking about next steps. Because if you don't do that with at least 5 minutes on the clock, you run the risk of running out of time. Even if everyone was on the same page and excited about this, everyone's about to go back to their day-to-day job and sort of forget about it. And it's just going to slip through the cracks. Um, so you need to basically say, hey, I'd love to continue this conversation, but I'm looking at the clock. Can we chat through next steps? And usually they'll say, oh, yes, thank you. I wasn't even thinking about the clock. And I have a meeting coming up in 5 minutes. Okay, perfect. So, next question you need to ask yourself is this person I'm talking to in? Like, before they go do anything in their organization, whether they're the champion or the decision maker or anywhere in between, where are they at personally? That's where you got to start, because otherwise, if they're going to go sell this to their boss, or if they're a boss going to take this to their team and they're just sort of like, it's sort of a, yeah, this is a nice to have, feel free to look into it, that's going nowhere. And you should probably coach them out of putting their reputation, like using uh like if someone's not actually bought in on this, I would hate for them to go fight for it internally. Does that make sense? So I would rather say, hey, it doesn't feel like this is the right time, or that you are actually convinced that you need this. I would hold off on having that conversation until you feel that way, if ever, right? They're going to appreciate that and go, that's a really good point. But let's say they're in. Okay. So now we're either talking to the champion or we're talking to the decision maker. And it's real simple. You're going back to time, agenda, outcome. What were the outcomes and the next steps you discussed? If it's a champion, it's basically, okay, so um, as we discussed, next step is to meet with your boss. What's the best way to get that on the calendar? Simple as that. Um, then in the conversation, a couple questions I like to ask is, how do decisions usually get made here? And who else needs to weigh in? You're asking this for you, but you're also asking this for them, so that they can really process, like, oh, you know what? The last time we bought something similar to this, whether it's technology, services, product, um, these were the things we had to jump through. So I probably should bring that person in earlier than later, sooner than later. So um, and then you're simply working backwards from the decision. So let's say in, I don't know, July. It sounds like that's the best, most ideal time to get started. Why don't we just walk backwards from the big picture steps that need to happen between now and then? What are the meetings that need to happen? Who needs to be looped in, and at what point, etc. Keep it simple. I like to think of it this way. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I need from you. And here's exactly what happens next, which is usually scheduling the next interaction that you're going to have on the calendar. So then if instead I'm talking to a decision maker, so this is like, let's say, you're talking to a person where you know that they could just write the check, or sign the check. I don't know if people do that to pay vendors much anymore, but you need to now coach them on, who do I need to bring this to on our team to make sure it doesn't fall flat, because their team is about to get another idea from their manager, their boss. their executive that they're going to roll their eyes and go, oh, great, another idea from so and so that's going to disrupt my job. So we need to make sure that we bring them into this process, not to create friction in the sales process, but to help your decision maker, your buyer, um, actually reduce friction in the sales process. So I like to ask, who else on your team needs to weigh in on this for this to be successful? And before we get them involved, are you personally in, or do you have any hesitations that we need to chat about? Okay. Um, that's where I'm going to stop for today. You are at the end of this meeting. When you've gone through each phase of the sales process, you should wrap up the meeting and go, this person needs our product or service. Here's why. Here's what's going on in their world. Here's how we're going to fix that. And here's exactly the path between now and then that we're going to go on together. Okay. If you have murkiness on any of that, you probably need to pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I have one or two quick questions that I usually ask, and I just need more clarity on it. Do you have a minute to chat through those really quick? Okay. Like, it's okay to do that. But you have to check these boxes in your first time sales meeting. That's all I got. Have a great day. See you next week.